The cream is starting to rise to the top in the Championship, as I think it's safe to say the title favourites are making their move. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel and another Roundup video here on the channel, rounding up round 17 of the Championship. A lot of round and Championship in that sentence there, but we start on Tuesday night, of course, with one of them title challengers, Burnley 2, Coventry City 0, and it's another typical Burnley performance. I spend enough time on this channel talking about typical Boro. This was typical Burnley in a sense that, as we've came to expect from Burnley under Scott Parker, they continue to not be all that grand on the eye, but they are just efficient. They just get the job done. And although it's another example of them overperforming their XG, being ridiculously clinical, scoring from 2 of their 3 shots on target, it's becoming a pattern, and it's been a pattern with all Scott Parker teams. I'd love to know how he continues to manage this, but Burnley keep finding results. But I said this in the weekend roundup video. I find myself repeating myself, and I'll repeat myself probably about a lot of the teams that are starting to pick up form now. When Burnley keep as many clean sheets as they do, they don't have to do all that much at the other end to win games, and their defensive record at this stage is nothing short of ridiculous. We might be looking at one of the best defensive teams the Championship has ever seen at this stage of the season. They've conceded only 2 goals in their last 11 games. It's another clean sheet for this Burnley team. It takes a lot of the pressure off what happens up at the other end of the pitch, which isn't perfect, but it's doing the job at the moment, and it's now 3 wins in a row for the Clarets after a couple of draws previous. Coventry just need a new start, don't they? They've had a really tough run of games, obviously winless in 4 now, still without a new manager. You'd like to hope for their sake that's going to get rectified sooner rather than later, but in the last couple of games to which they've come out on the wrong side of the results, barring the Derby game at the CBS, they've obviously got a point from Sunderland, a point off Sheff Utd, and come out on the wrong side of Burnley. So they're not fixtures that you can really judge Coventry on too much. An easy run is coming for them, and with a new manager, they'll be hoping they can finally get their season up and running. Hull 0, Sheffield Wednesday 2. Are we calling for a taxi for Tim Walter? I mean, I don't see a way back for him now. I think at the weekend with Luton, argument there that they were the better team and they just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. And I don't care what anyone says, going to the Kenny, no matter how Luton are playing, it's always going to be a tough game. However, when you're at home to Sheffield Wednesday, an inconsistent side who are there, who can be beat, this is a really poor result for Hull City. Now, they had the better of the ball, they had a few chances here and there, but quite honestly, their defence at times looked an absolute shambles. For the second goal, especially, you know, when the cross there was a switch from the left-hand side. I think all of Hull's defenders just assumed the ball was going out. They just stood still, like statues. The ball was kept in on the right, and by the time it was cut back in, Smith was free in the box, pretty much alone to put the ball away. And that just sums up Hull. You know, defensively, all over the place, as I've said loads and loads of times. Their suicidal open style of football does not fit the squad they've got. The players they have are not good enough to play it, and even when they get chances at the other end, it's just not falling for them. You know, they hit the post, Slater missed an unbelievable 1v1. I don't know how he didn't put the ball either side of the goalkeeper, but that's just the way it's going for Hull City now, and by the sounds of it, it's getting really nasty at the MKM. The fans have more than lost patience with the manager. He's coming out with crazy excuses as to why he doesn't go and salute the fans after games. It's just, yeah, a marriage that has well and truly come to its end, and quite simply needs to go their separate ways sooner rather than later. But the Hull owner is still absolutely stubborn on the fact that this manager is going absolutely nowhere, which I don't quite understand. If you were so quick to dismiss Liam Rosenior, I don't see what Tim Walter is doing to prove he should stay in this job. So I think it's a matter of when and not if Tim Walter leaves the MKM, because Hull are in the bottom 3 now, and they're in desperate times. As for Sheffield Wednesday, it's a win against a struggling side, yes, but as we've said over and over about Sheffield Wednesday, they're such an up and down team. It remains all about how they follow this up. Norwich 6, Plymouth 1. Oh wow, this was the definition of a one-sided affair. Norwich absolutely destroyed Plymouth, and it's exactly what Norwich needed. It's the perfect tonic as to what they've needed given their recent form. Back winning at Carrow Road, getting Science back in the goals once again, a hat-trick for the league's top goal scorer. And I've said, the one big thing for Norwich that worries me is that they are over-reliant on their home form and they're over-reliant on Borges Signs. So it's good to see other players chipping in with good performances and goals in this game. But let's not take anything away from the fact that as much as I think it was both a case of Norwich being really, really good, it was also a case of Plymouth being absolutely god-awful. We've talked about Plymouth's away form so many times here on the channel. It's the one big reason as to why I still have them going down, and it's just been backed up even further by this. They've won only 2 points from their 9 away games so far, scoring only 3, conceding 23. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Their away form is a lost cause at this point. It puts so much pressure on their home form. They've been scraping results recently with last-minute equalisers to get points at home when they've arguably been the second best team at times, so I just continue to worry incredibly for Plymouth. I feel like their league position has maybe not shown how bad things truly are there. I think it will catch up with them eventually, and their away form has to turn around to give them any chance, in my opinion, of staying up, because this is a sign that they, unfortunately, are only going one way. Sheffield United 3, Oxford 0. Sheffield United are right back into top gear now, despite having that blip against Leeds and Boro. Since then, 5 wins in 6, the best home record in the Championship alongside Watford. They just look, as we've said many times, the full package. I don't have anything more to say about Sheffield United that I haven't already said. Quality across the park, really solid defensively. They've got players in the attacking third, like the ball from Harmer into Raksaki for the third was absolutely delightful. They just look like the absolute real deal, and it would take either an injury crisis or something I think catastrophic to knock this Sheffield United side out of their rhythm, especially at Bramall Lane. It's just going to be such a hard place for anyone to get anything from. So, yeah, a fantastic result for them. Expected, yes. And Oxford, well, 1 win in 11, I guess, is not great reading. There are a few draws in there, and recent defeats have been to the likes of Sunderland, Watford and Boro. So I don't think alarm bells should start ringing massively for Oxford just yet. I think now is time for them to just take stock, look back at the wonderful start to the season that they've had, how well they've done so far, and, some of the results have come up against teams they just simply aren't competing with in the Championship. So they need to not panic, take stock, remember where they've come from, who they are, what they're fighting for this season, who they're fighting with, and I still feel like they're more than good enough to still be competitive enough to stay up in the league. They just have to ensure massively that these heavy defeats to some of the top sides in the league do not get the better of them. They can brush them aside and bounce back. Stoke 0, Preston 0. Well, this was a game that existed, I guess. I mean, both teams had decent chances at times. Stoke hit the post in the first half. Preston, I think, had an effort. I don't know who it was. I think it was one of their forwards who had a chance that, it was a tap-in at the far post. I don't know how on earth. I think it was Asmajic. Just has to connect with the ball. He just doesn't. And they don't score. It was an odd miss from him. But am I surprised to see these two teams come out with a draw 0-0? Not really. These are two sides that will just be mid-table this season. Not bad enough to go down. Not good enough to get in the playoffs. The only highlight from this game was Preston's goalkeeper having one of the most hilariously dumb red cards you'll ever see by simply sitting on the ball outside of his own box and handling it deliberately. I don't know if he was trying to win a foul or what. I don't know if he just lost his bearings. But he's lucky it happened in the 90th minute and not earlier, and then it didn't have an impact on the result, although it will, of course, mean they have to change their goalkeeper going forward. But that was the highlight of a game that, well, happened. Watford 1, Bristol City 0. Watford at home, Watford win. It's as simple as that. 7 home wins in 8 for the Hornets. As I mentioned, equal record with Sheffield United, who I think edge it on goal difference, but Watford's home record is absolutely ridiculous. And as I've said, it's propping them up. It's got them into the top 6, or it did do at the time of obviously them winning this game. So, yeah, it's a great result for them. Their home form still remains to be their huge weapon. It depends, as I keep saying, what happens on the road. If they can turn their poor form into wins, and if they can match it up with their away form, they'll be a playoff team. If not, then they will be relying on their home form, which inevitably will drop off. It simply can't retain, 7 wins from 8, whatever that, equates to percentage-wise. That is not going to sustain. It's not sustainable. That's not going to happen all season. So there is going to be a point to which this Watford side swings one way or the other. I don't quite know which way that is yet, but you can only give credit where credit's due, that they keep picking up wins. But when you look at the stats, actually, they scored from their only shot on target. So you could argue, if this home game was played a number of times over and over, Bristol City would have got something from this game. So they can maybe find themselves a little bit unlucky, Bristol City. Or maybe Watford were just really clinical, but Bristol City had more possession, more XG, more shots on target, come away with nothing, and it is 3 defeats in the last 4 for Bristol City now. But them defeats did come to Burnley, Watford and Sheffield United, so like a few teams at the moment, they have just been beaten by teams who are just at the top of their game, fighting at the top end of the table. And I think it's the fact Bristol City are pretty consistent up against everyone else. The fact they lose to these top teams is why I have them flirting with the playoffs, but they're just not quite good enough to get in there. Sunderland 0, West Brom 0. The draw specialists, shock draw. And this was a result that was rather predictable, like quite a few to be fair. I actually put a bet on Tuesday night, and I think I had 7 championship games on and 3 Champions League games, and I was let in by Manchester City, who dropped a 3-goal lead and let me in for £200. Every other game I predicted in the championship, I got right. This was one of them, a draw. And would you blame me? Sunderland have now drawn 5 in a row, scoring only 3 times in that period. West Brom have drawn 8 in their last 9. It is a run of draws I don't think I've ever seen before. Even more baffling stat is that 5 of them 8 draws have been 0-0. If you're a fan who likes to watch goals and entertainment, I'd stay clear of West Brom at this moment in time, but no surprise to see both of these teams drew here, and the result that doesn't help either. They both need to find their winning touch. Neither of them could do it here. I think if either side was to be happier, you'd obviously say West Brom going to the Stadium of Light, which has been a fortress really for the season so far. Getting a point from there, it's a better point for them. Maybe that's what West Brom went there to do, because they only had 2 shots on goal. Neither of them were on target. I don't know if West Brom set up to just get a point and frustrate. I don't know if that was Corberan's plan, but I guess if it was, it worked, because Sunderland simply could not put the ball in the back of the net. They had 18 shots, but for all of them 18 shots, only 2 were on target, and they just under mustered 1 XG. So that's not good from 18 shots on goal. So yeah, this run of form is starting to catch up with both of these teams now. These were 2 teams who started probably the quickest out of everybody. But as I've said time and time again, when you look at the numbers, it's just always going to naturally level out for both teams, and I think that's what we're seeing now. West Brom and their great start propped them up into the top 6 with, of course, the number of wins they had, but all these draws have caught up with them now to the point to which they've dropped out of the top 6 for maybe the first time this season, maybe. And Sunderland, of course, have now dropped out of the top 2 as well with 5 draws running. Again, both these teams propped up after really good starts, but are now starting to fall away, which I always expected to happen. So can either of them react? Who can react quicker? Who can get back up there and get back into the playoffs or the top 2 when the other big teams are starting to rally and find their feet? We'll have to wait and see. Cardiff 0, QPR 2. A result I don't think anybody saw coming, but it's a huge one for Queen's Park Rangers. Now, I think for them, it's a case of win at any cost. Doesn't matter how the performance is, it's about getting a victory, especially on the road, and getting one of your biggest disappointments on the score sheet, I would say, because Sella has been battered, and rightfully so, you could say, by some of his performances and how much of a flop he's kind of been since joining QPR this season. But for him to get a brace, I think could be huge for QPR, and just the 3 points, it just maybe keeps Cifuentes safe-ish for now, but when you look at the balance of the game, Cardiff equally should be looking and wondering how on earth they've not, never mind, come away with something. I don't know how they've not scored. The chances they had in this game, it was a mixture of them being wasteful, QPR's goalkeeper being absolutely amazing. He made 8 saves in this game. So although it looks like a really bad defeat on paper for Cardiff, and don't get me wrong, they are now 4 without a win, losing 3, 2 of them at home, where they had a really big bounce under Omar Rizza. It seems like Cardiff's really good start under him has certainly sort of fizzled out now, and I don't know if that's going to have any bearing on whether he gets the job or not. There's still no news on that, by the way, and I was banging the drum for them to sign him on a few weeks ago. Maybe that's now looking like a bit of a stupid thing to say because it has dropped off down at Cardiff, but you can't say this was a bad performance by them. 24 shots, 7 on target. They were the better side. The difference was QPR took a chance early on, managed to defend well, goalkeeper played well, then they nicked a second right at the end when Cardiff were pushing men forward. So performance-wise, I wouldn't say it's too much to worry about, but of course losing to a team who've not won in 12 is extremely difficult to take, and it is QPR's first win in 13 games. So Cardiff need to just be careful. Their form has certainly flipped and is faltering a little bit at the moment, and they just have to be a little wary of that with the drop zone not too far below them. And QPR, I wouldn't say there's massive positives to take out of the performance. I think, Sella got a brace. Goalkeeper played a big part too. But then you could say in other games so far this season, they've actually played all right and not gotten the results. So maybe this is one they've earned. But we'll see if they can use this to kick on now, and if they could finally put a run together that might see them claw the gap to safety and maybe save Marty Cifuentes' job. Leeds 3, Luton Town 0. This was a reality check for Luton in terms of the gap and where they are, because I'd have had both of these teams at the top of the table alongside one another before a ball was kicked this season. In fact, I did. I think these might have been my top two in pre-season, but I think it goes to show where Leeds are and sort of where Luton have fallen. Now, it didn't seem like as bad of a performance by Luton as it did when they come to Riverside a few weeks ago, but they were still more than well beaten by a Leeds side who are on top of their game right now, are certainly going through them gears I've spoke of, where I've always said, when they hit top gear, they could just run away with it. And I think we're starting to see, as I mentioned with Sheffield United, Leeds getting into gear now. Especially at home, they're an absolute force. I just don't see, like Sheffield United, anyone getting anything from Ellen Road at this moment in time. Leeds are just so dominant at home. The pressure, the momentum, the chance creation, the possession, it's relentless at Ellen Road. They just make it such a difficult place to go, and rightfully so. And, that's why, along with Sheffield United, they are, for me, just one of the top two, because they're just so reliable at home, getting the job done. And they took 3 really good chances here. Dan James's lob was particularly good, and it just shows the quality. I think the quality is starting to show in their team, and even though I'd say away form's still not been great for them recently, you saw against Swansea, they bring on Willie Gnonto. They've got quality to come on the bench. They've got quality in the squad that they can utilise to still win games when they're not playing at their best. But when they're at home and they're in full flow, there's nobody that can stop them. It's 1 defeat in 12 for Leeds now. They've scored 9 in their last 3. As I say, they're just starting to click into gear now, I would say, and home form is absolutely bulletproof. Luton, I think, as I say, it shows exactly where they are. I know they had a few chances in this game, and there was a really good goal line clearance at 1-0, but this is a sign of just where they are. And again, are we at another crossroads where Edwards gets questioned? I mean, every time Luton have won a game this season, they've followed it up with a defeat or a draw, and they just can't get going even now. So it still remains to be seen what happens down there at Luton Town, but Leeds absolutely ruthless at home. And talking of a team who aren't, Boro 0, Blackburn 1. The team who have won 3 in a row, scoring 15 goals, get beat 1-0 at home to Blackburn. And that's the difference. That's the difference between the team I've just been talking about in Leeds, the team I talked about earlier in Sheffield United, and Middlesbrough Football Club. Now, I brought this down, as always, in my Project Boro reviewing episode, where I went into a lot of detail on this and just Boro in general, but, it's reared the ugly head of all the problems that Boro have had previously and still have now, and that is our ability to break down a team who comes to Riverside and sits deep, and our inability to have good home form. We're 11th in the Championship for home form. It's simply not good enough, as I've just talked about with Leeds. I think them and Sheffield United find a way of winning this game, so it wasn't a great performance by Boro. There were a lot of quality players out who've been in really good form recently, so that is something that is a little bit unfortunate. And of course, the goal, the Blackburn goal, was absolutely miles offside. An appalling decision by the linesman. Should never have been given. I just don't know what on earth has happened there, So I think Boro, for me, did not deserve to win this game at all, but we didn't deserve to lose it either. A draw would have been a fair result. I would have took it. It's a real sucker blow that we've lost to such a poor decision from the officials, but Blackburn came with a game plan and it worked absolutely perfectly. They sat deep, they doubled up on the likes of Ben Doak, they pressed our centre-backs and our central midfielders, because without Hackney and Morris in the middle, we're just not as dynamic in the middle. So yeah, with Azaz out ill as well, it just proved that without some of Boro's top players, the drop-off in quality is rather significant, and that's what holds me back on us being a top 2 contender. So Boro's home form continues to be a ginormous stumbling block. Blackburn, though, have won back-to-back away games after not winning away from home at all previously. And I think with them, it's all about consistency. You've got 2 inconsistent teams here. To say it's a case of who can keep the good run going and cement themselves into them playoff places. And finishing with Derby 1, Swansea 2, because of course, Poor Pompey had their second game in a row postponed. Oh dear Pompey. Derby 1, Swansea 2, and what a win this is for Swansea. Let's not beat around the bush. Going to Pride Park and winning is not an easy task, and that's exactly what Swansea did here. And for a team who couldn't score not too long ago, they're looking really slick going forward. I mean, the 2 goals they scored here, I thought were absolutely fantastic. I mean, Vopopnik's strike is an absolute thunder bastard. It's a ridiculous strike early on in the game. And then the ball, the ball through for the second for Pereira was an absolute delightful ball through the Derby defence. So, an outstanding bit of quality from Swansea for both of their goals. But Derby, on the other hand, will be wondering how on earth they've not come away with more. I mean, their XG was 3.4. 18 shots, 7 on target. They had some really, really big opportunities. And I think it's just down to them being really, really wasteful in front of goal on this occasion, unfortunately. I would say they were unlucky to not have a penalty in the first half as well. So, yeah, it's a frustrating one for Derby. Only their second home defeat of the season, though, so I wouldn't say there's too many alarm bells to ring at home, although it is only 1 win in 8 for Derby at this moment in time. So they do need to get back to winning ways, I would say, just to maybe steady the ship, but they're not on a worrying slide at all, I would say. Swansea, though, maybe a bit of a smash and grab here with, them just taking 2 of their really big chances. I mean, their XG was 0.24, 2 shots on target, 2 goals. So the perfect smash and grab away performance, you could say, but it's 3 wins out of 5 for Swansea now, and their only 2 defeats came to Leeds and Burnley, and we all know how close they come to getting a point from Leeds. So Swansea's form is picking up. They're starting to score goals. So, yeah, an upturn in form for Swansea. I think a bit like Bristol City, they're beating the teams you'd expect them to beat, but they're losing to the teams near the top. So that's why I've still got them sort of mid-table, but it's certainly a positive upturn in form for them. So we'll look at the Championship table then as we head into the weekend's round of fixtures. And as I said at the top, I think the cream is starting to rise to the top now. Is there a surprise to see Leeds and Sheffield United at the top of the Championship table? No, there is not. They're the 2 teams that are very well fancied by everybody, me included, and we're seeing exactly why that is here. I know Sheffield United should have 37 points given their points deduction, which makes their start even more impressive, but they are the 2 teams for me who just look levels above. And as I've said, home form incredibly impressive, and they're just starting to click. I feel like they're now starting to really get into that top gear. Burnley are right behind them, although I still have certain reservations about Burnley. I think they will just get enough points to be well in the playoffs, but I just don't think they're quite good enough to really challenge Sheffield United or Leeds at this point. Sunderland dropped down to 4th, the lowest they've been for a while this season as they continue to drop points and I think naturally fall away from the top 2. As I've always said, just have that little bit extra and I think we'll gradually pull away. Watford and Boro make up the rest of the playoffs, with Watford, of course, winning once again. The chasing pack, though, have closed the gap slightly. Blackburn are within 2 points of the playoffs now. Millwall within 3. Norwich have gotten a little bit closer as well, with Swansea potentially a team to start looking out for. And then as we head into the bottom half, Pompey, of course, now dropped to the foot of the table just by the fact they've not played in, well, it'll be 3 weeks by the weekend, which is mental. A game gets postponed at the weekend because of weather, and then their home game last night gets postponed because of a technical issue at the ground. I mean, it's not great reading, but I guess 2 games in hand, 6 points to play for, win them 6 points, they're up in 16th. So, maybe it allows Pompey to maybe look at the table in a slightly more positive manner. But QPR are off the bottom, which is great news for them. Only 2 points from safety now. Hull City are maybe the team who are in the worst predicament at the moment. Down the bottom, winless in God knows how long, and just look like they're only going to keep slipping and sliding one way. So the next managerial appointment for them has got to be a massive one. And as I mentioned, Cardiff need to be careful. Big manager bounce, yes. It's certainly started to fizzle out now, and if they don't get the next appointment right, they could be embroiled in that relegation dogfight as well. And Plymouth are a team who, as I've always said, I think they'll be in there. I just feel like the data proves that they're one of the worst teams in the league. I think they're going to slip and slide into the bottom 3 sooner rather than later. And, you can't say Oxford and Coventry aren't that far off either. So it's still extremely tight down the bottom. I do think the better teams are starting to pull away at the top. But as I say, it will keep changing as the games go by. We've got Sheffield United Sunderland at the weekend, which should be an unbelievable game. Leeds got Blackburn, which should be rather exciting. So, I'm sure it will change even more by the weekend. And I'll be back over the weekend to review and round up all the championship games. I am away on Sunday, so the roundup might not actually be until the start of next week. So if it's not too late, I'll bring a roundup of the weekend's games. But until next time, guys, thank you very much for watching. If you've enjoyed the video, do hit a like and subscribe for more championship content to come. Hit the bell so you never miss when a video drops, and comment below with your thoughts on your team. And until next time, guys, do take care. I'll see you all next time.